actually don't believe in a God, and I could write
But you act
poetry.
like you do.
Huh?
But you act like you do. That's why you didn't
I
want to throw
act
poor
like-
Sam off the stage.
No, now you're making a claim. Okay, so I'm telling you I don't believe there's a God, and
Yeah.
your response to that is, I really do, because I have a moral sense. But my moral sense is utterly without any appeal to a God,
Explicitly.
or implicitly.
Maybe.
The
That's not so obvious.
Okay, it's really
See, because
it's
you
easy.
regard Sam Harris as an implicitly valuable entity, because otherwise you'd just throw him off the stage. And then the question is, well, just exactly why is he an implicitly valuable entity?
I don't
What's
think
your metaphysics of that?
I don't think he's implicitly valuable in the sense, I don't think he's implicitly valuable in the sense that the universe has implied that there's something explicit about it. For me, morality is far simpler than some people.
Now wait, you
make it
sounded
out to be.
doubtful about that. You know that, like
Maybe you're the mind reader.
Well, maybe.
Because you've already suggested that despite me sitting here and having talked about this for decades, that I don't believe in God, that I actually do because I have a moral code. But my moral code, which I've
Well, I was
talked
more
about,
specific. I said it was because you didn't want to throw Sam off the stage.
It is exactly when reason not only breaks down, but reason can't even go there, that revelation steps in and delivers an answer. And here we are debating, is that answer true? And the question I want us to think about, at least to get started tonight, with what tools are you going to deliver a true or false verdict on subjects that are outside the domain of reason itself? I mean, Immanuel Kant says on the first page of the Critique of Pure Reason, before we discuss the great reach, whether we discuss whether this is reasonable or that's not reasonable and whether this is empirical, he goes, we first got to set the boundaries of reason. What is it that reason can and cannot know? Why? Because what Kant is basically getting at is that once you go beyond the reach of reason, faith is not unreasonable at all. Why? Because you have nothing else.
I specifically don't think that the celebrity atheist types, who I actually have a fair bit of respect for, by the way, take it with due seriousness. So I don't think that they take it with due seriousness from a biological perspective or a phenomenological perspective or a literary perspective or a metaphoric perspective. That'll do for starters. I've become convinced that the fundamental presuppositions of our very functional cultures, or Western cultures say, are nested immovably in a metaphorical substrate. And that when you enter that metaphorical substrate, you're in the domain of religious phenomenology.
If we were in the year 4000 BC, if we were John the Divine, and let's just say that God showed us in a vision the actual end of the world, right? Sure. Apocalypse. We would then write down the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, death and famine and destruction. We're not engaging in myth-making at all. I'm actually writing what I see.
So you think there'll be a 7-headed demon?
Of course not. I'm saying that to me, what I'm seeing is so, let's just say, for example, it is a thermonuclear explosion
Sure.
of a kind that the ancient Bible writer doesn't even know what it is,
Yeah.
right? And the consequence of it is death and destruction and famine. He's going to write it down the way he sees it.
But
right?
where's he going to get the 7-headed dragon and the prostitute from?
This is his
like a human attempt to describe a nuclear reaction?
Yes, because when words and images fail, metaphor is the actual conduit to truth. The universe has always been around. It's always been here. You don't need an explanation for how it got started because it never got started. It's always existed. And the Greeks also believed, as you probably know, out of nothing can come nothing. So therefore, if you first had nothing, how can you get a universe? The Bible goes against this Greek tradition and states categorically, as a matter of fact, that first there was nothing, and then there was a universe because God made it. So there are some factual assertions here. The assertion that the universe had a beginning, the assertion that the universe, in a sense, came out of nothing, and of course the assertion that the universe was created by God. So we can, if we want to go down this road, I'm not going to do it right now, explore whether this astounding claim that was made by the ancient Jewish writers with no evidence at all, no empirical investigation, no scientific experiment, no attempt to measure the redshift of galaxies. Nevertheless, the ancient Hebrew writer says, we know this to be true because God told us.
There's the word in a phrase, and then there's the phrase, and then there's the sentence, and then there's the paragraph, and then there's the sequence of paragraphs within which the paragraphs are uttered, and then there's a broader context of interpretation within which all of that is interpreted, and then there's our emotional and motivational similarity, and then there's our embodiment in the world. And all of those things are operative at all times when we're understanding one another. And as you move outside the realm of the linguistic, like the paragraph level, let's say, into the realm of the emotional and motivational and embodiment and embodied, you also move into the metaphorical. And the metaphorical is structured in a particular way. And this is quite well documented, by the way. I mean, if you look at how the hemispheres interact, so the left hemisphere, broadly speaking, and I'm not oversimplifying this except that we don't have much time, is linguistic. But the linguistic utterances are understood in the context provided more by the right hemisphere, which is nonverbal, and which attends to things like the music of language. And so at the bottom of a linguistic structure, there's something that's extra-linguistic, and it tends to take form in metaphor and narrative and drama and that sort of thing. And the religious landscape is the narrative, metaphor, drama landscape. And if you disrupt it, then you blow apart the widest possible context within which the specific utterances are rendered comprehensible.
All right. So one of my professors at Dartmouth was Robert Jastrow. He headed the Mount Wilson Laboratory, one of the great astronomers of the 20th century.
Sure.
So Jastrow writes in his book, God and the Astronomers, that for 250 years, modern science has been attempting to discover whether the universe had a beginning. Mm-hmm. And you can think of these scientists as ascending a very tall mountain in which there are many pathways. And for many years, with the steady state hypothesis and so on, there were beliefs that the universe was eternal. It never had a beginning. In fact, that was the prevailing point of view. And then Jastrow argues it's almost as if we reached the top of the mountain and there was a bunch of Hebrew prophets or theologians sitting there who had been there from the beginning. So I'm describing now a skeptic, a true skeptic and a true scientist describing the scientific shock that attends to a discovery that, and I think it is out of the spirit of that discovery for you to go, oh yeah, I mean, it could have been this. It's like tossing a coin. It isn't like tossing a coin. This is a question that's been argued for 2 centuries and only resolved in the last several decades, and resolved decisively in one side and the other. And the fact that you're not willing to just straight out say, yeah, it is actually an astounding fact that we now know.
People would say, oh, and this is kind of what we're getting at from a different angle. I would say they would be afraid of what we would lose if we lost religion. And I basically said, demonstrate to me any benefit.
Oh, you'd lose art and poetry and drama and narrative and story.
Are there no godless artists and poets?
Well, there are artists and poets who think they're godless.
You're in a time machine. You go back to antebellum slavery in the American South.
Yeah.
And you find yourself on a plantation, and you say to the master of the house, you know, you own a bunch of slaves. I don't think this is moral. I don't think you should be mistreating them. Where do they turn? And plausibly so, to justify what they're doing.
Well, the answer
they pull out
is
their
this.
Bible, and you can say to them, well, hold on, have you read this verse? Tell me the verse. Tell me where I can point this person
Yeah.
in order to dispel them of their
So
ideas
I would
about slavery.
recommend to you a compendium of sermons that were delivered by Northern preachers in the decades leading
I
up to
want
the
to know what
Civil
the
War.
verses
Hold
are.
on.
I want to know what the verses
Right,
are
so
in the
I'm
Bible.
going to give you their mode of preaching because the key to it is to understand how they use the Bible. It's not the way you do it. Even the Southern theologians weren't dumb enough to say they enslaved the Amalekites, therefore you can enslave this guy who's here from the Congo. No, the Southerners didn't use those arguments either. Your arguments are in a different species altogether. If you look at the arguments between the Northerners and Southerners over slavery, they were far more nuanced than that. Basically, you had to do something like this. The Northern theologians would say this: are we or are we not created equal in the eyes of God? Yes or no? Yes. Are we all equally in need of salvation? Yes. Does God therefore love us all equally and make salvation available to us all? Yes.
And then you flip over
And
the Old
all
Testament.
that being the case, so hold on, it takes a movement now to go
too
from this
vague.
theological truth to a political application. But I don't have to prove that this is plausible because it already happened.
It's far too vague.
That is what a secular moral system does because it allows revision. Whereas religious systems don't allow for revision. There's not a Bible 3.0. There's not a Quran 2.0. There's no new revelation from God to say, hey, I said all this stuff about slavery, now I'm opposed to it. Or, hey, I was really down on homosexuals, but now I'm okay with it. Hey, when I said that here's what caused diseases, or that you were unclean and shouldn't enter the temple, all those things are actually wrong. The germ theory of disease is right. And none of that's come out.
Well, there is kind of a Bible 2.0. That was the New Testament, right?